is Lisa. I had a request to do a little segment on how to print on a journaling card or Project Life card, that type of thing. So I wanted to show you this. I've talked about it, I know, before in some of my videos, but I now have software that allows me to capture what goes on the computer screen. So we're going to talk about it a little bit and then go into Word and show you a couple of approaches to getting your text to fit properly, and then we'll print this out and see how everything looks. The journaling cards that I have are Project Lifestyle cards from We Are Memory Keepers. They're the traditional 3 by 4 inch size, or 4 by 3 depending on the way that they're turned. And I also have some over here from Basic Gray, this that you cut up. This process would work with either style or with any size. All you need to do is pick out your cards, have some idea what you want to say, and take some measurements. So let's start with this card. Is one I know I want to use with the flower. And we already know that it's 3 by 4. And I'm just going to make myself a quick little sketch here, so when I get to my computer I'll know what I'm working with. Now normally I don't necessarily have to sketch this out. Sometimes I do, but usually I just sit at the computer and kind of measure things and go from there. Now here, this one, I can start my text about 1.5 inches down on the card and come over a quarter, or at least a 1/2 inch on the card. And since I know this is a 3 inch wide card, that tells me that I have 2.5 inches of space over here and about 2.5 inches down as a block to work with. So I can use those and create margins, or there's another way of doing this in Word using a text box. If you're doing the text box, well, all you really need is how much space you have to print in. Not so much where it goes at this point, but how much space you have. So I know that I have 2.5 by 2.5. So for this card, I could use a text box that's 2.5 by 2.5 and then get that positioned for the text on the card. Now, same kind of thing for this card. I can come down 1 3/4. Call this one the dot card. And I can go all the way over to the edge, but I need to finish at least a 1/2 inch up. Or if I'm doing a text box, it would be 3 inches wide by 2 inches high. And then the last one that I'm fairly sure I'm going to use on this layout is one where I can start about 1.25 inches down, something like that. But this one's a 4 inch wide card. And we'll call it the noted card based on the wording there. And then it can go all the way to the bottom. Or my text box size for this would be 4 inches wide by 2 inches high. Okay. All right, so now let's go to the computer and put in some text and format these and see how they would print out, and then how we would get them printed on these cards. While you could do this next step in lots of different word processors, I happen to be using Microsoft Office 2010. The steps are very similar in all of the Office products. I'm going to do this 2 different ways. The first way is a more traditional way of adjusting the margins within the document and putting in my text. The other way is with a text box. So we're going to be working with that card that had the little flower in the upper left hand corner that needed to start, the text needed to start at least 1.5 inches down on the card and a 1/2 inch over. So let's adjust some margins for that. If I go to the Page Layout tab and go to Margins, I'll come down first to Custom Margins. And I'm going to change my top margin to 1.5. Now my left margin has plenty of room, and I'll click on OK. I could have changed the right margin there, or I can change it just along the ruler, which is the way I normally do things. So for the right margin, I want to bring that in to no more than 2.5. I think I'm going to bring it into 2 1/4 to make sure that it fits nice and neat on the card. And then I'm ready to insert my text. So I can just type my text in. Now I've typed my text in. I've also changed the font for the text over on the Home tab to Comic Sans 12 point for this kid page. You can use any font, any size that you like. But it's 2 1/4 inches in width. It's at least 1.5 inches down, and it's 1/2 inch over. Now the other way, and I can go ahead and send this to print, and then we can place the card on there. Another way that I can set up my text is to use the text box tool, and this can be really handy for these journaling cards where you have a different amount of space on each card. It's a lot faster than going through and changing the margins all the time. So if I go to the Insert tab, click on Text Box, and I just want to choose a simple text box. It places a box that's floating on my document. I can move it anywhere that I want just by placing my cursor over the edge where it changes to a little 2 arrow square indicator there, and I can move it over wherever there's a blank space in my document. I want to make sure that I have enough room there. I'm going to have that full 1.5 inches at the top, and then enough room left and right. Now I'm going to adjust the size of this because it makes it some default size. If I double click on the little text box, over on the right side of my screen I can adjust the height and the width of the box. And I know from taking measurements earlier that my text area for this can be up to 2.5 by 2.5. And I'm going to use those full sizes because it automatically leaves a little bit of space as a margin on the inside of the text box. And then I could go in here and delete this text and type in the text that I want to place in the text box. Since I'm going to do a duplicate of what I had before, I'm just going to copy and paste. Now the only issue I have with the text box is it has this border around it, and I don't want that border when I print. So if I click on the text box, sometimes you have to click on it once to get it to double click, then I can remove the border. The way I would remove the border is to right click on the box and come down to Format Shape, go to the line color and no line. Click on Close, and that removes the border around it. So when it prints, I don't get that line. Now if you wanted a line around your text for some reason on whatever you were printing, you could certainly leave it there. You could change the color of it. You can do whatever that you would like to do. So I have 2 different ways of printing this, both of which will fit on the card. Now a neat way to see how things are going to fit is to adjust your zoom. You'll notice that I have the zoom for this at 160% so that you can see it really well on the video and so that I can see it really well when I'm typing. If I click on the little minus sign down here, I can go ahead and zoom that back down to 100%. 100% is roughly, I say roughly because it's not always exact, it's roughly what you're going to get when you print this out on regular paper. And what you can't see me doing because I'm recording the screen is actually holding my journaling card up to my screen and saying, yep, that looks good. I think that's going to fit really nicely on my card, and I'm going to have enough room around this to place my card on my paper. So this is where we would send it to print and see how it comes out. So I sent my document to print, and now I'm ready to see if it fits the card. And of course it should fit either one of these since both of these are the same size. I just have to make sure I have enough room on either side, top and bottom, to fit my cards in here. And I'll attach my card then with some removable adhesive and send the whole thing back through the printer. Now one of the ways that I find that's easiest to make sure that you line things up when you have an area you want to print in as opposed to getting into this border kind of this situation is to just, you can use a ruler or you can just do this freehand, is to kind of mark along the edges. Top edges, bottom edges, and then here's the outside edge. So when I place my card here, I know that my text needs to go down here below this yellow and the flower. and the bottom's no problem, it will be over there. And then I need to make sure that I have this margin at least a little bit to the left of this line, and that the text doesn't, of course, hang over the outside edge. And then all I need to do is just to glue this down with removable adhesive and send it back through the printer. And I could have used either one. I could have used this one as well. They're both a good fit. So now I've run it through the printer and see how perfectly everything aligns. And then I just take this off and I'm ready to put that on my layout. Now sometimes I try to even get the spacing to the lines, but these lines were so faint that I didn't worry about that. On a card like this, I might play around with the line spacing and try to get the spacing to be exactly the same as it is here. But given again that these lines are so faint, I used to fuss with that, but I don't really worry about that kind of thing that much anymore. So now I'm ready to do the rest of my cards for my layout. And if you're watching the full version of this where we have the layout itself, then you'll see these cards put in place. And there's a link to that with this video, so if you'd like to see the layout completed with all of the cards, you can follow along. Thanks so much for joining me today.